Today is the 18th of March 2020. It's 13 minutes past 10 in the evening over here in the UK. Let's quickly run through some of these headlines. The New York Stock Exchange is to temporarily close the floor in this effort to combat the coronavirus. So starting from March 23rd, which is after the weekend, Monday 23rd, the floor will be temporarily closed. Trading will still be able to take place electronically. I see all sorts of problems with that. Capacity, the potential for a cyber attack, shutting down the stock market altogether, and no floor trading, no alternative. So that could be potentially catastrophic, keeping an eye out for things that happen on Monday 23rd. But obviously I've got the 21st of March, Sunday, on watch as well. The language that they're using in relation to the coronavirus, war footing, the Israel, China, India, from Spain to Italy, America with New York, they're all talking about this war footing, the United Kingdom, of course. And I've had that feeling from when they started to close everything down. It's just a very warlike scenario preparing for something major to take place. And obviously, at the same time, being able to save a lot of people some money or whatever, their fortunes and their valuables, by shutting things down early and allowing people to kind of leave work and stuff like that. Puts you in that mindset of war coming or being right on the verge of happening. There's going to be two hospital ships parked off of the east and the west coast. One is called Mercy, the other one is called Comfort. They are nearly 3 football fields long and 10 stories high. I worry about these ships. Obviously, they would be easy targets in the event that war started, with this whole war footing talk that they're bringing out in the language to combat this coronavirus. I say with air quotes. It just seems that these large ships may be some of the ships that have been indicated in the iPet Go 2 video. In particular, if I just go there now, actually, I wasn't planning to. I had this whole other bit set up. But if I go to this point in the video where we can see the burning house, if some of you remember, it's a bit blurred, but if some of you remember, I had a subscriber comment that it looks more like a boat from bird's eye view, with the front of it here, the back of it here, and it's on fire. And when I was just looking at the hospital ship there in the last image, which I'll go back to in a second, I could see the cross that they're using for the medical symbol, and obviously that's something that's represented here as well as the obviously representing a nuclear rocket where the nuclear symbol would be. It could also be representing a hospital ship. We've also looked at USS aircrafts like Abraham Lincoln and the USS John McCain. Those are still on watch as well. I'm not entirely sure exactly where they are, but they'll be on watch regardless. But just with that bird's eye view, the cross on the actual thing being on fire, as I said, there's the potential for this being a target in the event of any war, and they're both parked off of the east and west coast respectively. Obviously the stock market still plunging, had 3,000 points the other day. That's the largest in history. So we're really going down that market's plunge route, and obviously I'm not going to go to it because you should be familiar if you've seen the iPet Go 2 video, and I'm just thinking for those people who haven't, there's this point in the video, we have markets plunge running across the boy's eyes in the way that the news runs across the bottom of the screen. So the next thing in the boy's eyes is war coverage, and again, the whole war footing talk, we are going down that same path, it appears. So something is definitely on its way. Just when is it going to get here? Iran's Supreme Leader people are questioning where he is. He's been out of public view, much the same as North Korea's Kim Jong Un. Obviously, this virus gives them a good excuse to tuck themselves away, but he hasn't been seen for a while. And as I've said, the Persian New Year is coming up on Sunday, the 21st. Is that right? Or is that the 20th? So between the 20th and the 21st. And that's the period I'm looking at for this whole attack in the Middle East, where the war coverage comes in. The reason for that: 3 planes, 2 do nothing, 1 does something. That's 3, 2, 1. Possibly March 21st, which is coming up, and we could see these events unfolding in the Middle East. I've said I believe this area that we're seeing under attack here is Mecca in Saudi Arabia. There's also the possibility of it being Medina in Saudi Arabia, or Qom in Iran, or some other holy or religious site that I haven't mentioned, but it does seem to be connected to the Middle East and the Islamic religion. So we'll be keeping an eye out on March 21st through to March 31st as well, just because of the reference earlier in the video with Osama bin Laden. We see that there's a 3 and a 1 in the clouds up here, and I always say 3 and 1 in the clouds. And just going back to the whole, school reference, clouds, C for clouds, C is the 3rd letter of the alphabet. Here we have a potential March 31st reference. So just as I said, just keep an eye out for those things that are potentially coming, as we're seeing, the language strike a very similar pattern to what we see in the video. Markets plunge, war coverage, markets plunge, war footing. If you're on a war footing, obviously the next thing is war, is it not? And obviously the media will be covering it, therefore you have war coverage. So keep an eye out for that. Storms. We have a lot of storms approaching the United States. A winter storm will dump snow across the US on the first day of spring. That's coming up shortly. That's going to be traveling across, well, as I say, basically the entire lower 48 states of the country. Lower 48, they say. I'm not sure if that actually means 48 states, but I assume it does. There'll also be a solar storm hitting on the first day of spring. So plenty of geological activity, as well as pandemic activity, as well as the potential for war activity going on at the same time, with the markets plunging and all the countries closing down their borders and pretty much destroying their own economies. For what reason? Nah, bringing a new currency. You don't need the old one if you're bringing in a new one, do you? So that could be another potential reason why we're seeing this happen so rapidly. And obviously, I understand it's a surprise for a lot of people, but for those of us who not only have tried to decipher the IPEC Go 2 video, but for those of us who have just been aware of these things in general, it's no surprise. But I think I speak for everyone when I say it still has come quite suddenly, even though we were looking out for it. Just it's here, with quarantines and shutdowns, lockdowns, and all this sorts of language that's now being used. It's like, what happened to yesterday? So more storms, an outbreak of severe storms and tornadoes expected across central, southern US. So, again, we're just covering that whole place. Strong winds, large hail, and few tornadoes are possible. Could reach Oklahoma City and the western suburbs of Dallas. Localized flash flooding could also occur. That's obviously talking about today and later on tonight, moving into tomorrow. This Irish Prime Minister made a message which I found quite disturbing when I listened to it, and I'm just going to let you guys listen to it as well.
This is the calm before the storm, before the surge. And when it comes, and it will come, never will so many ask so much of so few. We'll do all.
So you see that language. It's very. I mean, the calm before the storm is the Donald Trump language, and this could very well be the calm before the storm. It's many years after he said it, but here we are. And he says before the surge, and the surge is something that is often associated with water. And I feel that that whole tsunami type scenario is potentially coming forward, and I'm going to explain a little bit more in well, in a couple more tabs. Hopefully, I'll remember. Um, the Italians, obviously, they've shut down everything, and obviously, Italy is where the Vatican is, where a lot of believers in Christianity, the Roman Catholic religion, in Jesus are. So I find that's very significant, along with all the churches that are shutting down around the world. They're calling it the Great Shutdown of 2020. Churches, mosques, and temples are doing to fight the spread of the coronavirus, stopping uh, all sorts of events, gatherings, congregations and stuff like that. It just it really seems to be an attack on the religious and the faith, and obviously, in my mind, if this whole thing is leading to, the new world order, the antichrist, the one world system, the one world currency, and all of that kind of stuff, then shutting down all of the religious institutions would be one of the steps you take in order to achieve that goal. So I'm seeing that as quite disturbing. And then this last tab here, UK schools and colleges and nurseries are going to close from Friday. That'll be Friday the 20th. Obviously, that's just before the 21st. And now I'll go back to the iPad Go 2 video in relation to what I see here. Obviously, I've spoken before about the scene going from blue to red, emergency, another connection with the UK flag, the United States flag, the Alice in Wonderland reference with the rabbit and the girl, written by a UK author. Um, with the schools closing and the exit in the background, this could be giving us a reference to March 20th when that happens. I was looking here and I was seeing these four figures, how they seem to all be connected together. In the middle, you've got the third character. He's got the M between his legs. Obviously, he's also looks like he represents Donald Trump. But the M could be for March. He's also the third character. And sideways, this is the number 3. That gives you that potential reference, as well as a connection to 33, which would be a Freemason number. Obviously, we've got the Masonic tiles on the ground, so that could be a double reference to that. But I'm seeing a potential for a reference to March here. And then he's got 2 on one side and he's got 1 on the other side. And that could be a reference to March 21st. On the ground, we see we've got a little wave, looks like a tsunami. Some of the children are displaying signs of being wet with puddles at the elbow and at the base of the foot there. But also we have X on the mouth, and that could give us an indication of asphyxiation. They're saying that the coronavirus has connections to respiratory disease and that kind of shutting down, so that could be a signal of, lack of oxygen, which could be connected with that, but also could be connected with something else, such as being underwater, which we again would come back to the wave. Now, when I was thinking about this earlier, I had a thought, but now it seems to have jumped from my mind. It was something about these two. Oh, yes, that's it. So in the middle of this scene here, let's turn that down. When it's dark, it's easier to see. So you've got the M just there, but that also kind of represents mountains at the same time, um, twin mountains. And then you've got this stag kind of leaping up, and they've drawn it in a way that it seems to be extending from the head of this character. And I feel like it not only has a potential reference to 2 religious sites in I'm not sure, in Saudi Arabia, again near Mecca. Again, the M could be another Mecca reference, which is holy. They walk between the two mountains, so there could be something there. But there's also the reference to volcanoes, with the whole scene of leaping on fire, potentially an eruption just there. And in terms of twins, Mauna Loa and Kilauea in Hawaii could be one of those. But there's also Mount Etna and Stromboli. So I'm just putting a warning out as well that we could, as well as looking out for things in the Middle East, there's also the possible connection with something involving volcanoes and them generating tsunamis around that same time. Um, in the background, sorry, actually, before I go on to that, when the girl drops the apple, it rolls across the ground 7 times. I've often interpreted that as like 7 days later, and then we have something. Now, if that's the case, then that will be a kind of 27 reference going on to number 27. If I just go back a tiny bit, in the background here, you can see the rabbit's ears make the number 2, and then you've got the 7 in the vine leaves. And I've always said vine leaves, and I've never taken the reference of the word leave, how that is a double meaning, 27 leave, and that could be telling us to, in this reference, go underground is what rabbits do. That's or hares do. They have burrows and they go underground. Right next to it are 3 blades of grass, which we see could be connected up as 327. Obviously, that leaves this one over here, which I don't really have an explanation for. But the 3, 2, and 7 do seem to flow together. And then we have the hare or rabbit looking directly at the 8th character in blue, or 9th character if you include the girl. If it's the 8th character, then it could be the very next day with a 2 and the 8 reference being right there. So 327 and then 28 just over here. When I skip over to when the apple is open, I kind of have that same potential interpretation for 328 as well, with the 3 seeds, 2 connecting, forming the number 8 in the middle. Obviously, that could be reversed for 823, for example, which would bring us to August, which I think is why I'm looking at these 2 different time periods for these volcanic eruptions, because one could be around Europe with Mount Etna and Stromboli, La Cumbre Vieja, La Palma volcano, and the other could be later in the year, around August, the time when it's Obama's birthday. This is Obama's foot, so that could be a connection to around that time. 8-3, for example, August 3rd would be the day before his birthday, which is on August 4th. But there's also the 821 potential and the other potentials that come out of it. So splitting those two, I see there could be potentially 2 different time references to 2 different volcanoes, or 2 sets of different volcanoes, and they all seem to have the tsunami reference connected to them. So where we've done our research, we know that the volcanoes that I've just mentioned are all volcanoes that have the potential for generating a tsunami if they were to erupt and their flanks were to collapse into the ocean. So that's all I've really got at the moment. I don't want to go too much further because I feel like the video is very long already. But as I said, all those headlines, the war footing, look out for war coverage. We're coming up to March 21st, looking out in the Middle East for those potential attacks around Mecca, Medina, Qom, or any other religious holy site. And that could then lead to retaliation, very quickly, involved with maybe Italy and the volcanoes and stuff like that. That could be set off purposefully with a missile or torpedo. If not, it could just be made to look coincidental, volcano blown up at the same time, generating a tsunami that could potentially affect or wipe out the Vatican. So you'd have an attack on a Muslim or Islamic holy site, and then you'd also have an attack on a Christian or Catholic holy site, and that would begin the war, which is something Albert Pike, I believe. The war will begin. War will be started between Christianity and Islam, and that's one way to start it. Attack 2 of the most holy sites in both of the religions, and there you have it. Following on from that, you could then have more attacks coming towards the United States, particularly beginning with New York, the East Coast, with the hospital ship there, and on the other side, you've got the other hospital ship. But I feel as if the East Coast will be affected first by anything. the Big Apple New York reference is right there. So with all that said, you guys, I hope none of it happens. But as I say, look at the world today. Have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Stay prayerful, stay faithful, and may the Heavenly Father bless you.